They thought I was too young, too soft, too sheltered to notice what they were doing, but when I overheard my sister say to my boyfriend, "Her inheritance is free, she's naive," I realized the truth in a single soul-splitting moment. I had been played. They weren't just close, they were in this together, plotting, lying, smiling in my face while sharpening the knife for my back. Hit subscribe and tell me from where you're watching, because what I uncovered next will leave you speechless. Let me take you back to where it began. I was 22 when I lost the last of my family and ironically gained everything. After our parents died in a car crash 2 years ago, I inherited their lakeside cottage and a substantial trust fund left by our grandfather, one he'd set aside for the more responsible daughter. Those were his words, not mine. He adored Vanessa, but he didn't trust her with money. I wish he was still alive. I wish he could see now just how right he was. At first I thought Vanessa's absence after the funeral was just her way of grieving. She moved out of state and didn't return my calls. A few cold emails, some belated birthday texts. For a while I even blamed myself. Maybe I was too emotional, too needy, but the truth was simpler. She couldn't stand that I got everything, the house, the money, even the antique jewelry Mom had worn every Christmas. Then one spring afternoon she came back. She knocked on the door of the cottage like no time had passed at all, holding a tray of coffee and smiling like a sister out of a soap commercial. "I've missed you, Em," she said, hugging me tight. "I'm sorry I disappeared. I wasn't ready." She told me she'd been seeing a therapist, learning to process her grief. I believed her. She looked amazing, tan, stylish, dripping with that casual elegance she always had. And this time she didn't come alone. She brought Lucas. Lucas was everything I thought I deserved and nothing I could afford emotionally. He was sweet, attentive, and the kind of man who remembered the exact way I took my tea down to the single drop of honey. He laughed at my bad jokes, sent morning texts, and played guitar on the porch with just the right amount of broody charm. When he smiled at me, I felt seen, wanted, safe. He said he'd met Vanessa through a mutual friend and she thought we'd hit it off. At the time I thought she was finally being the big sister I needed, helping me move on, pushing me to love again. The thought that she had handpicked him for something else, something calculated, didn't even occur to me. For months, things were perfect. I let him in fast, too fast I see now. He stayed over more often, started dropping subtle hints about our future. Then the conversations turned to practical things, financial planning, budgeting. He'd say things like, "I know you're smart, Em, but money like this needs real management." He brought up his friend, some financial advisor named Darren, said he was legit. Vanessa apparently worked with him too. Something about that rubbed me wrong, but I shook it off. I didn't want to be paranoid. I wanted love, family, trust. Then came Lucas's birthday. We threw a little party at the lake house, just a few friends, some wine, a lot of laughter. Vanessa stayed later than usual, helping me clean up after everyone left. Lucas had gone out to grab his jacket from the car, but they both ended up in the kitchen long after they thought I'd gone to bed. I couldn't sleep. Something felt off. I got up to get some water, walking barefoot across the cold wooden floor. As I approached the kitchen, their voices stopped me cold. Vanessa's voice was low but sharp, like the edge of a dagger. "She doesn't have a clue, Lucas. Her inheritance is just sitting there untouched. Do you want to waste time, or do what we planned? She's naive. You propose we take over her finances, and 6 months in, she'll sign whatever you put in front of her." My breath hitched, my skin went cold. I froze. I couldn't see them clearly, just silhouettes through the half-open door, but I heard every word. My knees went weak, but I clutched the wall to stay upright. I wanted to scream, to burst in and confront them right then, but something deeper, older, instinctual in me said wait. They thought I was asleep. They thought I was in love. They thought I was theirs to manipulate. They were wrong. I backed away, heart pounding so loud I swore they'd hear it. I slipped back into my room and locked the door behind me. Then I curled up in bed and cried. Quiet, bitter tears that didn't come from heartbreak but from pure rage. How could she, my sister, my flesh and blood, and Lucas, how long had he been pretending, holding me, kissing me, whispering about forever while plotting behind my back? But by morning my tears were dry. I stood in front of the mirror and looked at my face, puffy, pale, eyes red. Then I whispered to my reflection, "You are not naive, you're not weak, you've been underestimated." That was the day I decided I wouldn't just walk away. No, I was going to watch their lies crumble around them, and I would be the one holding the match. When you're betrayed by someone you love, your instinct is to run, scream, cry, confront. But I didn't do any of those things. I woke up the next morning, poured coffee like usual, and smiled across the table at Vanessa and Lucas, like I hadn't heard them plotting my financial execution just hours before. That smile, it was the mask I'd wear from now on, because I wasn't about to just survive this, I was going to bury them with their own lies. Lucas kissed my forehead and told me he was going to town to take care of something important. He even winked like we shared some inside joke. My stomach turned. Vanessa lingered behind, casually sipping her coffee while scrolling through her phone. The sight of her so calm, so smug, made my blood boil. I imagined throwing the mug across the room and screaming, "You're my sister, how could you?" But instead, I leaned back in my chair, crossed my legs and said, "I was thinking we should update my will." Vanessa's eyes darted up for a second too long. "Really?" she said, masking it quickly with a tight smile. "That's smart, responsible, you should definitely talk to someone." Oh, I planned to, just not the someone she thought. I spent the day pretending everything was normal. I texted Lucas sweet nothings. I asked Vanessa if she wanted to help me redecorate the guest room. She beamed like the conniving witch she was, and started making Pinterest boards. I let her believe I was still their puppet. But as soon as Vanessa left to run errands, I grabbed my car keys and drove straight to the one person I hadn't spoken to since my parents died, Mr. Dorian, our family lawyer. The drive to his office felt like crawling out of a fog I hadn't even realized I'd been living in. I kept replaying their words in my mind. Her inheritance is free, she's naive. I wanted to slam the brakes and scream every mile of the way, but instead I gripped the wheel tighter and reminded myself, calm is control, rage is noise. Mr. Dorian was an older gentleman, with the kind of integrity you could feel just by the way he looked you in the eye. He had been close with my grandfather, and unlike everyone else around me, he had nothing to gain from lying to me. When I walked into his office, he stood up from his desk with surprise. "Emily," he said warmly, "it's been a while, how can I help you?" I sat down and for a long moment just looked at him. Then I exhaled and said, "I think I'm being set up by my sister and my boyfriend." To his credit, he didn't dismiss me, he didn't act shocked either, he just nodded slowly and said, "Tell me everything." And I did. I told him about the conversation I overheard, the advisor Lucas kept pushing, the pressure to make joint decisions, the sudden reappearance of Vanessa after 2 years of silence. Mr. Dorian listened without interrupting, occasionally scribbling notes, occasionally shaking his head. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, folded his hands, and said, "I'm not surprised, your grandfather always worried this might happen." I blinked. "What do you mean?" He opened a drawer and pulled out a slim black envelope. My name was written on it in my grandfather's handwriting. He gave me this before he passed, told me to give it to you if I ever sensed you were being manipulated, or if you ever came to me saying something didn't feel right. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a letter. "My sweet Emily, if you're reading this, then I was right to worry. I always believed in your goodness, but I also feared that others would try to take advantage of that. Vanessa, she's my blood too, but I've seen the choices she makes. And love, real love doesn't pressure you, sweet girl, it protects you. If someone's trying to get close just to access your money, trust your instincts, trust yourself, you are stronger than they think, and smarter. Don't show them your cards, show them your strength. Play along, gather evidence, and when the time is right, strike. You don't owe anyone your trust, you only owe yourself the truth. With love, Grandpa." I cried reading it, not out of sadness, but out of relief. Finally, someone believed me, someone always had. Mr. Dorian then told me what I needed to hear next. Everything in my trust was protected, as long as I didn't sign anything. The account couldn't be touched unless I gave legal permission, and the cottage, in my name only, ironclad. But if Lucas proposed and we married, and I wasn't careful, community property laws could come into play, especially if he convinced me to shift funds or co-sign documents for the future. "He's not in love with you," Mr. Dorian said gently, He's a well-placed chess piece. But now that you know the game, Emily, you can play it better than either of them. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to cut them off immediately. I was going to let the act continue. Let Lucas fall deeper into his fantasy of control. Let Vanessa start dreaming of renovations and new cars. I'd document every whisper, every text, every little pressure point they thought they were hiding. They wanted a show. I'd give them one they'd never forget. And when the curtain finally fell, when I exposed them for the frauds they were, everyone in their lives would know exactly what they tried to do to me. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But mine was going to be delivered with a smile, a kiss on the cheek, and a quiet whisper. I knew all along. Because now every second I spent with Lucas was a performance, and every performance needed a secret audience. Mine, a voice recorder hidden beneath a flower vase in the living room, and a synced backup app that uploaded our sweet conversations to a private cloud. Lucas didn't suspect a thing, not when he leaned in close at dinner and said, "You know, if we combined finances, we could really make something big together." Not when I replied, "You're right, babe, maybe we should look at accounts this weekend." Not even when I handed him a perfectly chilled glass of white wine, placed just so in his favorite stemmed glass, and smiled like the trusting fool he still believed I was. He was playing a part, so was I. The difference? I was rehearsing for a finale he wouldn't survive. Every day I planted the seeds. I asked questions I already knew the answers to. I brought up his friend Darren, the so-called financial advisor, and pretended to be interested. I even scheduled a meeting with him, but with a twist. I had Mr. Dorian posing as my uncle in the room, watching every move. Darren was slick, too slick, the kind of man who says trust me before you even ask a question. He had a binder full of fancy charts and big promises, and talked fast, like he hoped I wouldn't follow. But I wasn't there to understand. I was there to listen, record and trap. "So what we'd do," Darren explained, tapping the glossy sheet, "is shift some of your liquid assets into a couple's portfolio. It's all legal, just paperwork. You'll still have access, but we'd make it more manageable under a shared account." "Shared?" I echoed sweetly. "You mean Lucas and me?" He grinned. "Of course, that way everything's transparent. He can make decisions on your behalf and vice versa." I pretended to think about it, nodded, took the binder, left smiling. The moment I got into my car, I tossed the binder in the back seat like it was radioactive. I was done pretending with the advisors, but with Lucas, oh, I had one last layer of performance to deliver, and it came in the form of a ring. It was a Thursday evening when he proposed, right in front of Vanessa. I don't know what disgusted me more, the way he faked emotion in his voice, or the sparkle in Vanessa's eyes, like this was finally the moment she'd orchestrated. He got down on one knee beside the fireplace in the cottage, holding a modest diamond ring and smiling like the devil in a tux. "Emily," he said, "these months with you have been the best of my life. I want to build a future together. Will you marry me?" I looked at him, then at Vanessa, then back again, and I said yes. Her clap was just a fraction too fast. His kiss lingered a little too long. The recorder under the coffee table caught it all. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, one hand resting over the ring on my finger like it was a brand. I didn't cry, I didn't rage, I just waited for the cracks to spread, because I knew something else was wrong, something deeper. The way they looked at each other sometimes, like they were sharing a secret I wasn't in on, the touches that were just a little too comfortable. The answer came sooner than I expected. Vanessa had been staying in the guest room to help with wedding planning. Lucas had his own room down the hall. But one night I woke up to go downstairs for tea, and I saw her door slightly ajar, empty, no light, and then I heard a soft sound, barely audible, a laugh, low, hushed, coming from Lucas's room. I crept down the hallway, every nerve in my body on fire. I pressed my ear to the door. Silence, then the sound of sheets, whispers, a sigh that didn't belong to me. I didn't need to see it. I knew. They were sleeping together, my sister and my fiancé. They'd taken betrayal to a level I didn't even think possible, and they thought I was going to marry him. I walked back to my room that night and looked at myself in the mirror. I wasn't heartbroken. I was done. I was steel. I was coiled and ready. The next day, I bought a safe. I locked up every document I owned, title deed, trust papers, legal copies. I changed passwords, set up security alerts on all accounts, even had my internet and phone services rerouted through private servers, because I wasn't just going to break the engagement, I was going to make sure when I did, it ruined them both. But first, it's funny how betrayal sharpens your instincts. Before all of this, I couldn't even install a printer without YouTube tutorials. Now I was shopping for discrete motion-triggered cameras online and watching surveillance footage like it was my new religion. The day the tiny camera arrived, disguised as a phone charger, I felt a strange calm. This wasn't about spying, this was about justice, about holding a mirror to their deception, about making them see themselves, exactly how I now saw them. Vanessa had gone to a spa day that I'd booked for her, claiming it was a bridal thank you gift. Lucas was at the gym. I knew their routines now, I knew everything. In 15 silent minutes, I had the camera installed in the corner of his room, angled just enough to catch the bed, the door and the dresser mirror. It looked like nothing, but it would soon capture everything. And it did. I waited 2 nights. Nothing happened, but the third night, I sat alone on my laptop, the screen glowing in the dark, earbuds in, heart pounding, the live feed blinked on. There she was, Vanessa, slipping through his door in one of my robes. She giggled, then dropped it like she was in a bad movie. He pulled her into his arms. No hesitation, no guilt, just 2 people so consumed with themselves they forgot I existed. I didn't blink, didn't cry, I just hit record. Then I hit save. The next morning was a symphony of lies. Lucas came down first, kissing my forehead. Morning fiancé. I smiled. Morning love. Vanessa joined us later, humming while scrolling Pinterest for wedding centerpiece ideas. I made them pancakes. Lucas liked his with blueberries. Vanessa hated syrup. I remembered everything. They forgot everything that ever mattered. That night, I emailed myself the footage, sent a copy to Mr. Dorian, uploaded it to 3 backup drives, just in case, because now, I wasn't just gathering proof, I was preparing for battle. But I still needed one thing, a public moment, a stage, and oh, did the universe provide. Vanessa decided to throw me an engagement party, not out of kindness, but as a sick parade to show the world what a perfect couple Lucas and I were, and how involved she was. She invited friends, distant family, even my old college roommate, who she hated. This will be so elegant, she said, swirling wine at the dining table. You'll wear your grandmother's necklace, and we'll get a caterer. Lucas can give a toast. A toast, I echoed. Yes, that sounds perfect. Lucas beamed like a boy getting away with murder. I felt nothing. The party was held at the cottage, of course, the one I inherited, the one they planned to gut and sell for a quick profit, once I was married and legally shared everything. They had no idea they were planning their own public execution. I wore ivory silk, delicate and classic. Vanessa insisted on a dramatic black gown because she couldn't stand not being the center of attention. Lucas looked every inch the perfect fiancé in a crisp gray suit. He held my hand like he meant it. Everyone clapped when we walked in. They had no idea they were guests at a war. As the evening wore on, people mingled with flutes of champagne and soft jazz in the background. Lucas stood up just before dessert and tapped his glass. I just want to say, he began, how lucky I am to be marrying the most generous, intelligent, and beautiful woman I've ever known. I watched him, not blinking, not smiling. I know some people think love at first sight isn't real, he continued, voice smooth. But when I met Emily, I knew she wasn't just my future, she was my safe place. I could almost hear Vanessa giggling behind the guests, like she knew the punchline already. I stood slowly. Lucas, I said, interrupting him mid-sentence. That was beautiful, but I have something even more beautiful to share. The crowd turned toward me, curious, confused. I reached into the drawer of the hallway console and pulled out a remote. I've been saving this, I said, for the right moment. Click. The flat screen behind the dining table flickered on. And then, there they were, Vanessa and Lucas, on screen, in bed, laughing, touching, plotting. Gasps echoed through the room like thunder. One woman covered her mouth. Someone dropped a glass. My old college roommate muttered, "Oh my God." Lucas turned white. Vanessa froze, halfway through pouring herself another drink. I looked at them both, calm, cold, ready. I know everything, I said. The affair, the plan, the lies. You thought I was naive. No, I was patient, and now, I'm free. Lucas opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. Don't speak, don't lie to me anymore. The silence was delicious, then I turned to the guests and smiled. Dinner is still served, just not the wedding. I walked out, not crying, not broken, powerful, whole. You'd think they'd run after I exposed them, but liars never leave quietly. Lucas tried calling me the next morning 10 times, texted things like, I made a mistake, and it didn't mean anything, and I was manipulated too. Right, manipulated, by the woman he kept inviting into his bed. Vanessa. She didn't bother with apologies, just one long, venom-laced voicemail. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. You ruined your own life, Emily. You always did play the victim. No, Vanessa, I used to be the victim. Now, I was in charge of the script. I filed a cease and desist that same week, banning Lucas and Vanessa from the property. My lawyer, Mr. Dorian, had the paperwork ready before the party was even over. We'd been preparing for this while they thought I was still decorating wedding menus and trying on veils. Legally, they had no claim to the cottage, no joint accounts, no shared assets. Lucas had never even signed a lease. He was there on good faith, which he destroyed the moment he betrayed mine. So I changed the locks, sold the furniture they lounged on, and started fresh. But the real reckoning came when I found the will, the original one from my grandmother, handwritten and witnessed, buried deep in a locked drawer of her old armoire. I'd never read it in full before, but that day, something nudged me to. There it was in her own cursive. To Emily, my heart, I leave the house, but more than that, I leave you its peace. Never let anyone take it from you. Trust your instincts, they're sharper than you think. I wept when I read those words, not out of sorrow but because she'd seen this. She knew I'd need strength, and she left me exactly what I needed to find it. After that, I stopped looking back. I renovated the cottage, not to erase the past but to honor it. Every room became a statement. Where Lucas once whispered lies, I painted walls in bold colors that made me feel alive. Where Vanessa once strutted and schemed, I planted sunflowers and wild lavender. People in the neighborhood started noticing. You've transformed the place, they said. There's something brighter here now. There was. It was me. But closure, I've learned, doesn't always come with silence. It comes when you face the ones who tried to break you. So when I found out Vanessa was working a part-time job at a boutique uptown, bragging that she was back on her feet, I visited. She didn't notice me at first. She was behind the counter, laughing with someone, her hair curled like she had something to prove. Then she turned and froze. I smiled. Vanessa. She blinked. Emily, I just wanted to say thank you, I said, calm as ever. Her mouth dropped. Excuse me. If you hadn't tried to betray me, if you hadn't made me question everything, I'd still be sleepwalking through life. You helped me wake up, and now, I'm more me than I've ever been. You think you won, she hissed, stepping closer. I don't need to think it, I live it. I left her there, mouth twisted in confusion and rage. I didn't need her remorse. I didn't need her understanding. I needed her to see that I was untouchable. As for Lucas, last I heard he was crashing on Darren's couch, broke and whining that women were too difficult to trust. The irony nearly knocked me over. He still hadn't figured out that trust isn't given, it's earned. And once you lose it, you lose everything. It's been 6 months now. The cottage is mine, fully, finally. I turned the guest room into a writing studio. I've started journaling again, real writing, raw truth, no more fairy tales, no more soft corners, just me. Some nights I sit on the porch with tea, watching the wind ripple through the trees. I think of the girl I was before all this, hopeful, trusting, maybe too soft. Then I think of the woman I am now, still hopeful, still kind, but never naive again, because when the people you love use your heart as leverage, you can either let it break you, or you can use it as a weapon. I chose the latter, so to Vanessa and Lucas, wherever you are, you thought I was the easy target, the sweet one, the girl with inheritance money and no backbone. But you were wrong, because you built your castle on lies, and I bulldozed it with the truth, and I walked away with everything that mattered, my home, my peace, and myself.